What's good, family? Welcome to another episode of Lamb Live. I am your host. My name is Lamb. This is Lamb Live, where we talk with creators and creatives about culture, creativity, and how it's all connected to the life that we're living. Today, I got my guy back once again, Wolly McNair, along with his co-writer of their new series called El-Ton, The Broken City, which is on Kickstarter right now, David Rucker. How you guys doing today? Y'all doing well?
What up? What up?
Doing well.
Appreciate you having us, brother.
You already know what time it is. You already know. So today we're going to be talking primarily about El-Ton, which is their new comic book series that they co-wrote, co-created. That's on Kickstarter. As I said before, it's on Kickstarter right now. But before we get into that, I'm going to ask the question that I love to ask. What is inspiring you right now? What are you reading? What are you watching? What are you listening to? I'll start with you, David. What's inspiring you right now?
I think right now I am reading H.P. Lovecraft's At the Mountain of Madness. That's what I'm reading right now.
Okay. Wolly? Anything other than the birds and the air and the nature? You know what
Yeah,
I'm
I had to put my glasses on because y'all got glasses on, so I was like, yeah, I want to join the glass squad right quick. Right. Yeah, man. Just watching some animes with my son. I can't remember the new joint he just put me on to. So just checking out stuff like that, bro. And yeah, then other stuff, the birds, the mountains, the air.
For sure.
The day to day, you know.
For sure. For myself, I actually had a chance to see Wolly. What was it, like 2 or 3 days ago now, right?
Yeah.
Here in Atlanta at MomoCon.
Hey.
And
Say in the A, yeah.
The A, yeah. And I don't know. I just left feeling very inspired. I don't know. Whenever I'm around other creators and other people, you know, talking about their work, showcasing their work, seeing people engaging with the work, it gets me excited. So I've been feeling real excited, real inspired about writing and creating and getting back out there in front of people, sharing my book, sharing my work. So I think that's what's inspiring me right now. So anybody want to add anything? Anything come up for anybody as I was talking? No?
Yeah, I'm really digging Dragon Ball Kakume.
Okay.
I think that's another thing that I'm really digging into. It's a fan anime. Am I right on that, Wally? It's totally a fan one.
Yeah, I
Dragon Ball
believe
Kakume.
so.
Yeah, it's getting animated. So it's a very different take on what Dragon Ball we're used to.
Yeah. Dope. I'm gonna check that out. Well, let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's talk about El-Ton. This is on Kickstarter right now. Let's see where we at. We got 38 backers. I don't know the exact percentage of this. I know it's over 50%, but it seems to be moving pretty well. Can one of you tell us about what this series is? Give us the pitch.
Yeah, 67% right now. So we're pushing to get to this base goal, and this base goal is the starter goal. We want to go way beyond that, of course. But the story, I like to say, Netflix Daredevil season 1 meets HBO's The Wire. You know, you mesh those two shows together. You got the gritty street level, layered storytelling. Just so happens to center around a vigilante character anti-hero character, somebody who doesn't consider himself a hero at all, who's fighting to save the city that he loves and the people that he loves within that city. His name is Jamal. In costume, he's called Remnant. Cat who came up in the streets, went to school trying to better himself, find opportunity that didn't quite work out, decided to go into the military, the Marines. excels greatly within the military, but then realizes that's not the path either. Comes back home, sees that things are worse than when he left, loses somebody super important to him, and that sends him spiraling into a place of having to figure out what he wants to do to change what he sees going on in the city. So that's it in the quick elevator breakdown.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. David, you want to add anything? You want to say anything about it?
I think Wally hit all the high points on this. I think he did a great job. I think it's a it's a dark journey. It's gritty and it's got a lot of realism to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this. What was the genesis of this idea, and how did you two come to collaborate on this together?
David gonna take that.
Yeah. Well, the interesting about it is that I think Wally and I both have two different versions of the story. I think
that's perfect. I was hoping that you would say that.
Yeah, I think for us it's the question of who came up with the idea first, or who pitched the idea to whoever. But I think we can both agree on when the idea was pitched that we both started working on it together. The idea came about when we were at Fayetteville Comic Con. It was one of the first Comic Cons that I actually had gone to when I first started out doing Decimation Earth, and I was new to the game. And Wally kind of took me underneath his wing and invited me along to a couple of Comic Con conventions, and this particular one was Fayetteville. And while we were there, this idea came about, and as we were sitting at the table, in between people coming up, talking to Wally, talking about the books and everything and art that Wally had in front of us, we were just batting back and forth ideas about how this concept was going to come about.
Right.
It was like, I guess the word that some people use, organic. It wasn't forced. It was like Wally and I were on the same wavelength. He came up with, he would come up with a suggestion for a character, then I would sit back and think about it and scroll down now. So what do you think about this for this character's background? He's like, okay, well, what about if we put this character in this situation, i.e. Jamal? And then why not, have someone, we're going to set him in the story of, Lumberton or Elton, what they call his hometown of Lumberton. And it just grew from there. And as it grew, the story grew, the story arc. I mean, I think we've been working on this after that for about a year or two, and the story arc just blew up. We were able to get from the beginning to the end of the story arc, and we created so many characters and have so many ideas of where we want to go with this story. So I think for the most part, it's been a fun adventure, a fun ride, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me ask you this, David, because I know that it's set in the hometown of Wolly.
Mm-hmm.
What about Elton sparked this idea for you? Or matter of fact, let me ask you this: what is your personal connection to this story?
I think the personal connection to me to this story is that, just to give a little background, Wally and I come from, I'm from Ohio, up near the Cleveland, Akron area. And, listening to Wally talk about his upbringing and his experiences and what it was like to grow up in Lumberton intrigued me, because it was a lot different from what I grew up in Ohio, in the Cleveland, Akron area. I grew up in an area that was, as my wife says, is farm country, because she's from the Cleveland area. So she's a city girl. So to hear the stories that Wally shared with me was very intriguing, because there were some things that I could identify from his family life, and there were some things that I was really intrigued to explore as we developed this story. And then at the same time, with me being in the military and in the Marines, there were things that Wally found that we could use to develop Jamal and create this backdrop for Jamal, from combining his experiences of growing up in Lumberton, Wally's experiences growing up in Lumberton, and my experience in the military, that we could combine together into this character.
Yeah.
So I think that's what intrigued me, and I think also what intrigued me is the chance that Wally taking me when we're in Valeville to meet his family, to experience a little bit of Lumberton, and to hear some of the stories that he would share with me about his childhood growing up in Lumberton, and how it was for him to bounce between Charlotte and Lumberton. And it was just a very rich story. And I felt that if we could encapsulate that story and introduce the character that we developed with Jamal, we had something there. And like Wally says, it's like the Wire meeting the Daredevil first season of the Daredevil.
Yeah. Yeah. So Wally, let me ask you this. What does it feel like? What's the experience like? You're very familiar with Lumberton or Elton, right? But what's it like bringing somebody who may or may not be familiar with that world and sort of showing them, hey, this is what this is. We did this, we said this, we live like this. Like, what's that experience like for you?
I mean, it's cool because just getting to share things that I guess often would go unspoken or underlooked, overlooked. But it's also cool because it sparks conversations in general, right? Like if I'm telling David about certain things growing up in Lumberton or Charlotte, and then he compares that to certain things he might have experienced or the differences between the two. Right. And it sparks deeper conversations on things that we can do with these characters as far as how we convey these things to other people who aren't from these places. But also what's similar about it? Like, how does this relate to someone who's from somewhere else? Can we find some sort of thing that relates or connects or at least makes it humanizes some of the situations that are happening and occurring, even just small things. Like we just had a reminder a few weeks ago. I forgot that there's still a Confederate statue in front of the courthourhouse there. You know what I'm saying? And someone from there was like, yo, make sure that y'all get this in there somewhere. And so when I told David, his eyes lit up like, yo, there's so much we can explore just with that dynamic of if you pull up to the courthouse and there's a Confederate statue sitting there, and you go into this place that's supposed to be about justice, but yet this is what's in front of the building, and that's just a small symbol of a lot of other things that can be going on. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's cool, and it helps me to relive certain things too that I might have forgot about at times, and then we start digging through the layers. You know what I mean?
Right. So in addition to that, and David touched on this a little bit, but I sort of want to dig into the question of like, what is co-writing, the process of co-writing creatively? What has that been like? Has it been difficult? Has it been easy? Like, how have you navigated that process?
Well, I think Ro already knows it's probably chaos dealing with me.
I won't go say nothing. I ain't say that. Wally
yeah. Nah, like it's been give and take on both sides. Like me being so close to the subject matter, there's times with David to be like, well, yo, I think we should do this. And in any other scenario, it would be great. But then I'm like, well, I got to answer to people. You know what I'm saying? So if we do that, someone's going to hit me and say, yo, bro, what's up with that? And then, there's a conversation had. David be at the crib sleep. I might be on the phone arguing with somebody because I'm trying to justify why we took this route. But then there's also me stepping back from being so close to it, because sometimes David's outside perspective may be a better take on how something should be portrayed. And it also helps us to step away from the realities of some aspects of these stories more too. You know what I mean? And then there's the flip side. He has to go through some give and take because he might write something that's from a writing standpoint phenomenal, but I might look at it and be like, nah, we got to switch this. We got to change that. We can't even use that right there. Mm-hmm. And then it's a lot of work that he might have put into it and a lot of thought. But I'm trying to figure out like what makes sense in this world, and what's going to be reviewed as authentic in this world. But it's the same thing when we get into some of the military aspects. Like certain things are there. I don't even debate with David about. It's just like, all right, bro, you and your partners know more about that than me. Even though I have military people in my family, like he lived it. You know what I'm saying? So he brings a certain authenticity to it. But then sometimes we get to a place where it's like, all right, bro, we still doing the comic book though. So we can just kind of jump the gun a little bit on that. We can, you know what I'm saying, flex a little bit of that right there. So, you know, it's all about the balance, finding balance. On my end, it's probably easier than it is on his end. You know, I might go in there and change 3 or 4 things and feel like it's solid. Then he come back like, nah, let me change this whole 12 pages right quick.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. How about for you, David? What's your perspective?
I think from my perspective, I think it's a give and take relationship. I think it's coming to the table and realizing what each of you bring to the writing process. And I think it's also the ability to hold each other accountable. And to be able to say to your writing partner, say, hey, you know, let's take a step back, as Wally said, and let's look at this look at it from a different perspective. Because there's been times for me when I've written, there's been times when I've sat down with Wally and we've gone over some of the stuff that I've written and with his influence, and Wally's like, you know, as Wally says, you know, hey, we need to take a step back on it. It's learning not to take things personally. It's learning that it is a shared creative process and that everybody has a say in the ideas, and it's a joint consensus of how the story is going to be told. I mean, as he said, for one example, there was a part in the story where I was being too technical when it came to the military aspect of the story, and we went round and round and round about it, and I was so enamored with being technical that Wally was like, had to sit me down. I was like, hey, look, you got to remember this is a comic book. We got to allow room for the imagination. You know, we got to jump the shark here. You know, it's okay. He's like, you know, we know what we know, but we still have to tell the story in a way that is allows the reader to have some room to, I don't want to say fantasize, but gives them a little bit more to use their imagination. Yeah. And the beautiful thing about writing is that you have to be outside the box. And this is the one thing I'm learning with Wally as I'm going through the creative process, is learning to be outside the box when it comes to writing. Not to be so rigid and not so be so structured and following certain rules or guidelines to writing. There really isn't one when it comes to a creative process. At least with this story. And I think that's the beauty of this partnership between the two of us, is that we've learned to work together. I don't think we've had an argument between each other. I know there's sometimes that I annoy Wally on certain things, and he gets a little sound in his voice. Be like, come on, bro. You know, let's dial that back a little bit. Okay, let's chop this up and walk through this and see if this makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, and there are aspects sometimes where I will go off and write 36 pages and hand it to Wally, and then Wally will go, oh yeah, let's tweak this here, and then a week later I'll change the whole entire script. And Wally's like, what are you doing? Well, I just got this idea, and it just wouldn't leave me alone. So
yeah. So to, I guess, piggyback off of that, and real quick, let me shout out Dr. Sheena. Dr. Sheena, thanks for coming through. Good to see you. How do you? I love asking this question, especially to writers and artists and people who work in comic books. How do you navigate, or how do you deal with you have an idea and you say, I want to do this, right? And your partner is saying, that don't feel right. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you know when to stick to your guns and I think I've asked Wiley this before, but how do you know when to stick to your guns and when to say, I'm going to let this one go? David, how you navigate that, David?
That's a difficult question for me to answer because there are some times that I am too rigid. And Wally will tell you that I am very rigid sometimes on certain technicalities as we tell the story. But I think if you go into it with an open mind and you're willing to listen, it makes it a lot easier. It's not an easy process for me. It's something that I'm still growing into to learn to be less rigid.
Oh, is he coming back? Yeah, he freezing up.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
You said you was learning to be less rigid.
I don't know what. Yep, learning to be less rigid. And I think that is going to be a still process that I'm going to have to grow into. But the fact that Wally and I can sit down and have a conversation and be able to see each other's vision and have that debate and come to a consistency at the end of the day, I think that's what makes this co-writing work between the two of us.
Yeah. You have anything to add to that, Wally?
I mean, just give and take, you know what I mean? And sometimes it's gotta be some balance. If David gives on 2 or 3 things that I was real strong about wanting to do, I gotta give room to certain things, you know what I mean? But everything that we are not eye to eye on, we try to have, like you said, those conversations to get a better understanding of why. Like sometimes he'll present something, I'm like, well, yo, just break that down to me. Why are you feeling that? You know what I mean? And vice versa. And sometimes it's just trust. Let me trust what my partner's thinking. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure, but this might work. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So let's give it a shot.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Wolly McNair and David Rucker about their newest project that is on Kickstarter right now. It is a comic book series, the first in a. Y'all consider this an ongoing series, ongoing comic book series?
Yeah, especially if they help fund this campaign for sure.
For sure. So that's what we're talking about. The link is in not the show notes, but the description of this video. Definitely support. They're about 67% of the way to the goal, the first goal, and all the support that we can get, that they can get, is welcome and appreciated. Thank y'all so much. Let me ask you this question, and I think this sort of goes hand in hand with what we just talked about. But what have you? So, working on comic books or working in the industry for so long, I think sometimes we forget that we can constantly be learning lessons about who we are and our creative process, right? So I wonder, what have you learned about your creative process through the process of creating this book? Wally, you can go first on this one.
What have I learned? To make sure that you're open to conversations. I mean, I already knew that, but I think it's developed more. You know what I mean? Because I am the type person, when something really feels a certain way in my soul, my spirit, I do stand on that real hard. Pause. Real stable. But understanding that my way is not always the way. And even if I do feel strongly that it is, let me at least see what the options are. You know what I mean? Because that's the whole point of having a team, being able to depend on each other in different ways. So, but I've also had to learn to let go, because I'm not drawing this book. And this is the first book that I wasn't actually illustrating, that I was a part of creating. but it's been an easy process on that part because the work that Solomon does is amazing. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
And if there's anything that's not there, I sketch it out real quick, shoot it to him. Me and David talk about it. We sketch it out, shoot it to him, and he makes those adjustments, and we right back at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. What about you, David?
Listening and learning to trust your voice. I think that's the thing, and also that my creative process doesn't necessarily work by just sitting in front of the computer. My thoughts and ideas come to me in the middle of doing different things. I could be sitting watching a television show. I could be walking down the street. I could be working out. I could be, doing something at work.
Right.
And the idea is that I think for me is learning how to capture those thoughts, those ideas, and writing them down.
Yeah.
And journaling them or documenting them, because those ideas that come to you later, and then when you sit down to write, it isn't there.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things I've learned to come to understand, and also being opening to listening to new ideas, which is something that is kind of hard for me, because I have, like I said, I have a vision of seeing something, so it's trying to break that rigidness of like someone else can have an idea that might be better for the story than me having the idea. As Wolly said, we sometimes have to go back and chop it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Wolly, what do you want people to know about Lumberton?
I mean, it's a real place. You know what I mean? It's not just the negativity that some people speak on first and foremost. And there's real people there. There's good people there. There's solid people there. And just like anywhere, there's people who aren't the best, and there's people who are. But there's a lot of community there. There are a lot of standards and principles that certain people live by, you know. And I want people to know that there's something solid everywhere. You know what I mean? So that's part of what the documentary side is about. I mean, we get into some of those things with the comic itself, of course, showing Jamal's upbringing and things that impacted him, both positive and negative. But and with the documentary, as we work on that, we want to really explore the people, the everyday people who make things move from whatever standpoint. You know what I'm saying? But there's a lot of adversity. There's a lot of obstacles that have to be overcome. You know, the economy is rough, period. But when you start going into places where there are less opportunities, people got to do what they got to do to survive. Survival mode is real. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but I just want people to see the beauty of it all too.
Yeah. Can y'all talk a little bit about the theme, I guess the main theme of what L-Ton is about?
David, you got it? You want me to speak?
I'm gonna let you roll with it, and I'll follow in if you miss anything.
I mean, you know, the main thing is how far is one willing to go, and what is one willing to sacrifice to save what matters most to them. You know what I'm saying? Whether that be the people, whether that be the location, whether that be whatever, but how much is too much to give up for something that matters to you? You know what I mean? At least in this aspect of the story, that's the core. You know what I mean? And also, it's also a journey of showing how we get to where we are. You know what I'm saying? What leads to these decisions, these steps, the process, what causes a person to be who they are today. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's a lot of the core of what the focus is: self-reflection from an internal and external perspective. Because hopefully, when you're seeing some of these characters develop, it'll make you even look at your own life and say, "Ah, man, maybe there's something to this. Maybe there's a reason why I see things this way today that I wasn't even aware that impacted." Because with Jamal, we do jump back and forth into different parts of his life, which helps to paint the better picture of who he is now and why he's that. You know.
Yeah, yeah. So, this theme of sacrifice and how much is too much, how far is too far, right? How did you land on that theme? Because from my experience writing, you can be telling a story and you can have so many different aspects, and there's a variety of characters and there's so many different things that you could say, right? Why was that the theme, and why was that the question that you felt we got to answer that with this story?
I mean, for me, because I ask myself that a lot. You know what I mean? Like, what got me to who I am and what's missing? What have I lost? Because I think about the kid that I was, and there's times where I'm like, man, I miss that guy. I want to be him. I want to be more of him and less of who you start to sometimes think you're supposed to be. I remember talking to one of my OGs, and he was talking about how sometimes people put on a mask so long they forget who they really were. They just become the mask. And one day you look back and be like, dang, how do I get the person that's wearing the mask back? Like, because now when you take it off, you look like that instead of who you were. And so for me, it's reflecting on those type things and understanding, peeling the layers back and saying, yeah, you didn't just wake up this person. Jamal didn't just wake up this person. There's things that happened that got him to that place. You know what I mean? And if he could give it all back, would he? Would you give it all back? But at the cost of what? Losing everything else. So what's the ultimate sacrifice for him is letting go of everything else because nobody else can or will in his mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. You want to add anything to that, David?
Well, I totally agree with what Wolly says, but I also will add to that. One of the themes to me is when I think of Elton and the themes, I think of I can't remember the book by John Grisham, but it was a movie with Samuel Jackson and Matthew McConaughey, and it dealt with a young girl being essayed by some individuals, and the question and how John Grisham came up with the stories, because he was doing research one day and he was sitting in the courtroom and he saw a young girl testifying about a situation like that, and the question popped in his head: as a parent, how far would you go to get justice for your child when you think the system would not work for you? Would you be satisfied with what the system put in front of you? And when I went into this with Wolly and we looked at Jamal and we started developing the story and the tragedy that hits Jamal and the things that he sees in his city and he wants to right them, the question that kept coming into my mind is like Wolly said, how far would you go? How far would you go? Because there is a line. How far would you go over that line? Because for our character, Jamal, he's not a hero. And he does not even view himself as a hero. He knows what he's doing is wrong. But it's the sense of personal, what he sees as justice, sense of what he views as right, sense of what he views as moral, to fight for those things that he believes in to make things better. At the end of the day, if I was to getting into the mind of Jamal as a character, at the end of the day, he knows this is not, for our character Jamal, let me back up, this is not Batman. This is not the Daredevil in the sense that, the city's going to embrace him, they're going to accept him, they're going to love him, right, and he's going to become, the Dark Knight of Gotham. And correct me if I'm wrong with that on that statement, Wally. But I think for Jamal, this is a journey for him to right injustice that he sees from a system that has failed his city, his family, and the people of the city. That the corruption has seeped so deep into that city that there's no other recourse for him but to take action in his vision as he sees it.
By any means necessary. Malcolm X to the fullest and beyond. There's no restrictions for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the people that do uphold him as a hero are the people who are the most voiceless, but even some of them can't justify what they see sometimes. You know what I mean? And he's accepted that.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, David. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with Wally. I was totally agreeing with Wally. I mean, and I think Wally makes a perfect point there, saying he is a representation for the voiceless and the downtrodden, but yet, as Wally said, for them, there's some things they just cannot, get behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, he's out there doing things that is getting these people off the crime and the corruption off the streets and making a change, but there are laws, there are rules, and he's crossing all of them. He's doing things that are very questionable, and I don't want to say not necessarily socially acceptable, but they are questionable. And I think for Jamal, and I think for a lot of characters, it's a matter of them looking at themselves and questioning themselves with, like, how far am I willing to go with this?
Mm-hmm.
If I can't find justice through the system, if I can't find justice through those who are in charge of enforcing the law, do I take it up in my own hands? And if I do, how does that look?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, how is it going to end for me?
Yeah.
But he's smart enough to know it's not just fire with fire. Like, I'm gonna bring water to the firefight, or sand, or you know what I mean. Like, my job is to stop this at the start, at the root. I got to get to the root of it all, and you know what I mean. And to do that, I got to be willing to go where they're willing to go and beyond.
Yeah. And I just wanted to this is a little tangential, I think, but when you were talking earlier, Wally, about wanting to be the person that you used to be, one of the things I was thinking about was, so they're like the voluntary sacrifices, right? But then there are like the involuntary sacrifices where you don't even realize what you're becoming, right? I remember one time I was my family went to see my family, maybe Thanksgiving, some family event. And when I left, my mom called me and she said, I was talking to your brother and he asked me, he said, what's going on with Ro? And she said, what do you mean? And he said, he doesn't smile as much as he used to. And my mom said, he been going through some things, you know what I'm saying? And one of the things that I was thinking about as you were talking was, I didn't intentionally think to myself, oh, I'm gonna harden up, or I'm gonna stop smiling, or I'm gonna,
Right.
But in order to cope, in order to deal with what's in front of me, I decided I chose to say, okay, this is how I need to move in order to survive. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
What do y'all think about that?
About which aspect of it? Just subconscious?
The idea of saying, like, we change, and it's not always I'm choosing to be this. It's just involuntary response to what's in front of you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's some of the things we're trying to unveil, or layers we're trying to dig into with some of this. You might have a politician that was a solid person, and then they realize they're not getting no ground trying to do it this way, or they don't have the funding trying to do it this way, or whatever it might be. So they say, you know what, I'll take that little bit of extra money from this to try to do this.
Right.
And before you know it, years later, it's become the norm without even realizing. And maybe they are still doing something good, but there's a whole lot of other things that come with the other side of that. Or that cat who started out, man, I'm gonna hustle just enough to pay the rent and make sure that the lights is on and blah blah blah. Right. And then you start realizing it ain't that easy to get that kind of money going into this 9 to 5 and yada yada yada. So before you know it, I had a partner who got so caught up in the money that he would blow it just as fast as he was making it because it was so easy to get back. And he wasn't even thinking about, oh, I've been doing this for a few years now. What started out as let me just get us out the hole right quick turned into, and then the other realities of it start to sink in. And now it's hard to, because now you're looking back and actually looking at it, you're like, oh man, like,
right,
wow, how did I get here? You know what I'm saying? But so I think, but with Jamal, the difference is he's well aware of the choices he's making now. At one point, he wasn't. It was just survival mode, like you were saying. But now it's like, well, I'm here.
We here now.
And this what I'm gonna do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. Real quick, shout out to Nadia. Appreciate you coming through.
What up, Nadia?
Terry, how you doing? Thank you for coming through. If you're just joining us, definitely check out Elton on Kickstarter right now. The link is in the description of the video of the YouTube or the Facebook, wherever you're looking at this. Definitely support this Kickstarter project. It's a 28-page comic book. It's the #1 of an ongoing series, and definitely check it out. Definitely support. My next question, why for people who may not know what Kickstarter is, why Kickstarter? Why did you take this project to Kickstarter?
We gotta recoup some money.
I think a lot of people do not realize how much it is to finance an indie project. I think people seem to feel that us as creators or comic book writers who are outside the community, that it's easy to just write, draw, and put the product out, but they don't see the cost of what it takes.
Hello, David. We lost you, bro.
David, you cut out, brother.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. My Bluetooth must have cut out. Sorry. Once again, the time and sacrifice that we take away from our family, the amount of resources that we need to put this project together. I mean, for Wally and I, great. Yeah, we are both writers. We're working on this, but we do have to bring in an artist. And the cost that the pay for the artist, there's the lettering, there's the colorless, there's so many moving pieces behind this. And Ro, you know this personally. Sure. This is a very expensive endeavor.
And that doesn't count the sweat equity. Like, even though we bought in an artist, there's still things I had to draw, still things we had to design, still things we had to lay out for marketing and promo, and you know what I mean. And the cost just it can balloon real fast if you're not careful, you know. But us having done this before, we definitely figured out where we could take on more ourselves to cut down the cost and things of that nature. Right. But we're still aiming for the best quality that we can have. We're still aiming. So, and then with Kickstarter, you know, with Kickstarter, it's like any fundraising situation. You get to offer additional perks and additional things that people can take part in, limited editions, exclusive covers, you know, things of that nature that give people a different part of it that you might not necessarily get walking into a store or a comic book shop to pick up a book or a graphic novel, you know, like the hoodies and the t-shirts, which brand different aspects of the book. You know what I mean? The companion book where you get to see the script and you get to see some thoughts from David. You get to see thoughts from me. You get to see sketches. You get to see some of the original concept work compared to what actually makes the book. So, you know, it's just getting even little things like the Tupac cover. You know, a lot of people don't know Tupac's mom, Miss Afeni Shakur, is actually originally from Lumberton. you know, so tying things like that into a Kickstarter exclusive, you know, that cover is based on a very famous Tupac cover, but the tats he has, Herb Life, is something you would know if you're from Southside Lumberton. You know what I'm saying? So getting to throw those little Easter eggs and things like that in there are all cool things that you can do with a Kickstarter, you know. So
Yeah,
that's a big part of it, you know, why we chose Kickstarter to kick this off.
yeah, for
No
sure.
pun intended.
For sure, for sure. Nadia says she got her Bequest Studios t-shirt on, and she says she is definitely going to support. So thank you so much, Nadia.
Thank you, Nadia.
We
Yeah, we
definitely
appreciate that.
it for
And
sure.
we appreciate everybody that tapped in too. Definitely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
definitely.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this. Can you talk about, well, you touched on a little bit, Wally, but just, I guess, some of the rewards that you're offering as a part of this Kickstarter, which you just named a few of them, but just so that people, you know, really hear it. What
Yeah.
are go ahead.
Well, one thing we have is anybody that pledges to the campaign, when the campaign ends, you'll get a digital copy of the soundtrack. The soundtrack is music from people from Lumberton or surrounding areas.
Let's go.
You know
Let's
what I
run up
mean?
the skull.
Yeah, Ro loves one of the most aggressive, possibly negative songs on the soundtrack. But it's a dope song. You know what I mean? But all the artists are either from Lumberton or surrounding areas. And that was very intentional, wanting to try to use this book as a way to cross promote and bring people in who maybe wouldn't have heard some of these artists otherwise, just because of regional situations and because there's so much out there. But they're dope artists. They've been on their grind, you know what I mean? And we all wanna put North Carolina on the map in every way possible. And it's, of course, who doesn't want to put their hometown on the map? But there's also the variant covers. There's also the hoodies and t-shirts. There's also skate decks with art. Some people love skate decks, not even just to skate on them, but to put them on the wall as wall art. We have 3D statues, 6-inch statues, one version that you can paint yourself to make remnants or Jamal's costume, whatever color you want, and another one that's fully painted. Mentioned the companion book that we have. What else we got, David? Man, I don't know. We got
a statue. We've got statues. We've got I think you mentioned the companion book, which is going to be a phenomenal item, I think, once that gets into the hands of those who pledge for it. We've got also a producer credit for the help
for the documentary.
For Lumberton. There's so much stuff that's out there for anybody who pledges for this, and I think, you know, with everybody's help, I think, you know, this is definitely going to be a success. And I think, you know, whoever pledges this and picks up this story, they're going to really enjoy it and they're going to want more. And we're going to continue to write more.
And you get to be on the ground level with us.
Yes.
Once this goes into the other places that we're pushing to get it, you know, it'll be cool to be able to say, yo, I was there from the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because David has every intention of getting this on TV.
Yeah. No, that's all you, man. I last time I checked, Wally was pushing for Tubi. So
I'm pushing for the outlets that make the most sense. We're gonna listen. I'm just telling people, if you know me well enough, you know I'm determined to get where I'm determined to get one way or the other. If I don't get there, you ain't gonna be able to say I didn't try.
Right, and we are determined to get this out there in every media platform we're out there, because we really believe Elton is a story that needs to be told.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off of the why Kickstarter, there really is something special about knowing that the people helped you produce something. You know what I'm saying? Like when I did my first comic book on Kickstarter, it was like 250 people supported it, right? The next one, 175 people supported it, right? So to me, there's just something special about saying, like, this is not corporations, this is not Hollywood, this is not big money, this is the people said they wanted to read this.
Right.
They helped me put this together. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
for me, there's just something really special about that. So I'm glad you said that, Wally. Like that ground floor, like, you know, we did this together. Like, yeah, I wrote it and we brought in artists and they drew it, but at the end of the day, you had an opportunity to be a part of this journey and say you helped bring this to life. You know what I'm saying? There's something special about that for sure.
For sure. And it's important ownership, man. Like I've been big on that for so long. Like been in a position where you know you own it, you make the decisions, and the people who are standing with you. Like that's just a different thing, man. It's a different situation because so many times things that creatives create get taken or whatever, and they have no more say so. You know what I mean? So when you're a part of it from that early stage, you get to see the purest form of whatever it is.
Yeah. So I just have one more question before we get out of here. Outside of reaching the goals on Kickstarter or any, you know, financial gain that can come from this, what in your mind would define this project as a success?
Inspiration, inspiring somebody else. You know, I done had comments and messages from people from the area and not from the area who are like, yo, I'm just proud to see somebody pushing something that no one told them they could do about a real thing, and telling me how inspirational it is and what they plan on doing for their area. So if nothing else, you know what I mean, we did that.
Yeah. How about you, David?
Same thing. Inspiration. If someone can take what Wally and I are doing and follow their dreams and create something big and amazing, then that makes me happy.
For sure. Nadia says, you definitely inspired my, what does it say, first 18-year-old son at the con in Charlotte.
Oh, word. Yeah, he was super cool. That's good. I hope he's still active with it too.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully we see y'all at Heroes Con. What? It's like 2 weeks, right? We're gonna be there in 2 weeks.
Father's Day weekend.
Yep. So hopefully we can see him again. And she said, yeah, he is. That's great. We love to hear that.
Yeah, for sure.
So brothers, I appreciate y'all for coming on. I got so much respect and admiration for y'all. Y'all really the OGs in the game. I'm a rookie, you know what I'm saying? So I look up to y'all and I've learned so much from y'all. So I appreciate y'all coming through tonight, talking about this new project. Definitely, if you're watching, if you're hearing this, definitely go support, put some money behind this project because I know it's going to be special. Again, anytime you do something that's based on, you know, real life, hometown, you know it's special. You know what I'm saying? And I think the people should want to bring this to life. So definitely check it out. Wally, David, again, thank y'all so much.
Man, we appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you having us on. Appreciate you taking the time to rock with us, helping to push this. You know what I mean? We're just gonna keep building and growing.
You already know what time it is, man. To everybody else, like this, share this, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for showing up tonight and tuning in. Nadia said the pledge is done. We put out quality. Y'all put out quality work. Thank you so much.
Appreciate that, sis.
Thank you.
Sasha,
appreciate that big time.
Coming through. Thank you for coming through. And with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and get out of here. Like, subscribe, share. We love y'all. Peace.
Peace.